Classical. Now, today's work will be focused on project design and proposal writing. So from the overview of the policies that we had during the first day and trying to connect policies with programs, and particularly trying to connect policy objectives with your own project initiatives and your own interests. Then we've stepped further into description of EU programs which are relevant for you and how you can identify those that you should target, monitor and respond to the calls. We've also discussed how you can influence the programming process. Regardless of whether you will be trying to lobby in Brussels for your objectives, or at the level of operational structures only for your projects, or to advance your project writing, how to establish communication and how to effectively communicate with different personality types, cultures, and so on. Where are those typical conflicts and how to use them as resources? We've surfed a little bit through all of those subjects of power, influence, lobbying, and for some of the subjects we went a little deeper, for some faster. And now today we're stepping into the excellence of project design and proposal writing, the core, the heart of the technical part of the work. So it's very challenging, it's very demanding, what we'll be discussing today. We'll start with practical work, with workshops. So we'll start with workshops. I had planned to address all of your individual interests. As the most advanced proposal writer and project manager in the group, I would invite our colleague in a few moments after I finish the introduction to discuss jointly with me one of the topics, and then I would then nominate, let's say, one of the topics ideally from the security work program, or well, draft work program, so we can deal with that and demonstrate together how we start project design, how we create work breakdown structure, what then activities, expertise, resources, partnerships are requested by the Commission, how to proceed then further. I'll also then continue with elaborating, and we will focus on one project initiative for European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights. So you can find some of the closed calls. So we'll use one of the templates and the definition of the objectives of one of the previous calls in order to help you for the workshop of something 15 to 20 minutes to address methodologically how to respond to the call text and what should be in a proposal. Then we'll continue with the identification of project proposal forms, project evaluation criteria which are given to you, and then identification of those sub-evaluation criteria which are typically not immediately published transparently for everyone, but how to find and understand sub-evaluation criteria, and focus your proposal writing to respond with evidence, proof, measurable evidence, credible statements on those sub-evaluation criteria in order to ensure that evaluators don't have any space for subjective assessment of what has been provided to them, but to narrow down that space, that they can only award you the maximum score because they have fulfilled everything which was required, which is their job. This is what they are paid to do. So now, by the end of the day, after analyzing, we'll be discussing mostly, you won't be practicing the most advanced tools for project proposal writing, because it's a process, it takes time. For example, my typical research and innovation action proposal, if I'm leading it, if I'm leading the proposal development, would take me between at least 6 to 8 months from the time when I identified the topic and started to discuss it with colleagues who have experience, references and so on. And it will take me a month before I have a locked-in commitment from some of my colleagues who are leaders in their respective fields. And then we'll be jointly analyzing and first creating the framework which we'll simulate today on how to harvest the contribution, knowledge and experience of everyone else in the team and ours. Usually we have one person dedicated to proposal writing on such a large scale, leading and taking in contributions from the others, and then how to send out the structured form and ask for inputs, ideally by providing them drafts from partners, and giving them clear instructions, especially if they're new partners. You would then ideally have to coach them a little bit while they're giving you inputs on what might be the best input for you, but not overly, so allowing them sufficient time and flexibility to present what they know, because you wouldn't need them as partners if you would know everything that they can do and should and so on. So you need to really benefit from their inputs and try to make synergies and accept innovative ways of working and thinking that they have and so on. Now, those are the challenges usually for one person who's leading, coordinating the process of preparation of such a huge proposals and projects is a project in itself. You really need to manage it as a project, as something that has a start date and it has milestones, and for example, you give yourself and your team an internal deadline, which is like a month or 2 weeks before the formal deadline, in order to then use all the seniors in your team for pre-evaluation. So you give all of them, once you've created your final draft, a role, you send it to them and ask them kindly, could you please now correct the last version as if you're evaluators, and take a look for its consistency, for the smallest mistakes if there are some and so on. It's a very, very competitive arena where we are, especially within Horizon. Now, opposed to that, typically Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights, the second example that we'll use, would not take us 6 to 8 months or even longer period to work on. It will take us something like 2 to 3 months of work. So it is a bit less competitive, it's less difficult to create then dive into the specific challenges and how to be successful in the external aid and intervention arena. And you will see that at least you will need one person being devoted to this for as a full-time job for a month. And in both cases, you're not sure whether you will be awarded the grant. So you're competing with others. You can only do your best and hope that you'll be successful at it. Now, make sure to respect causality and consistency principles. This is how I'll start, and most likely by the end of Sunday, this is how I'll end. My last message will be the same one. So, you see, we start with the project environment. We start with analyzing policy objective, based on how EU works. Now, the essence of why the instruments are there, why Horizon exists, why European Institute of Democracy and Human Rights exists, why are they willing to give grants or some kind of credits, investments, or whatever, is to achieve their own policy objectives. And we collect that data here in the project environment, and we refine the data in the project background document. So you also need to contribute with your, this is where you're giving your added value to the project design, with your own knowledge and research about your knowledge about stakeholders, their problems, context in which you're working, the specific issues. And you do need to have a very well justification and description of the problems that you're going to be addressing. As well, to some extent, stakeholder analysis. If you're working on a large-scale collaborative project that ought to be impacting new policies, now you can't really do stakeholder analysis before you've started the project down in the last detail and in depth, because it's a really huge effort. But what you can do is to do it up to some extent in order to identify the leaders, the best partners, in order to do some work. So that's the level of stakeholder analysis on large projects. If you're dealing with European Institute for Democracy and Human Rights, for example, for a country-based scheme, you can do full stakeholder analysis before you start the project, and then address and justify their needs and problems and specific ways how you deal with them. So why is the cornerstone of the process? You always, in designing proposals for the EU, you always start with this problem definition, challenge definition, depending on the program, differs how it will be called, and address those problems. Your intervention, your product is designed to respond to this. So then your objectives ought to emerge from those problems as a solution to them. So then you need to describe what will you be doing and how you will be doing that, and then who, when, where, and so on, results, risks, how you control the work. So you see, from the problems you have your objectives, from your objectives your activities on how you will achieve those objectives, and from those activities inevitably you will need human resources, person months, you will need some equipment, and so on and so on. So the resources needed, and then we need mechanisms also how to control. This is the logic on how we compile, how we design projects. Now, in terms of methodologies, I've already mentioned there is now this project management methodology published by the Commission as an attempt to streamline for all the DGs and for all the programs how to standardize processes of project management. Yet it is just an attempt still. It is still not fully applicable, because this is the first time when the Commission is starting to merge project management PM book, ISO standards, its own project cycle management book, its own guidelines for Horizon projects, its own guidelines for purely research and scientific projects, and so on. So it's really it's a good attempt. You should certainly read the PM guidelines, but I'll sum up the key issues about different methodologies. So I'll start with Horizon and make a parallel here with the, here I'll say research, technological development, innovation schemes. Here, in the next column, I'll address all the external actions. Now, the most significant instruments that we're using for both, in this first case, here you have Horizon, and here we'll use Institute for Democracy and Human Rights as an example. And the third one are, in both options you might find opportunities for investment or business development projects and so on and so on. So I'll just say here business plans or feasibility studies as the pillars of the cornerstone for the investments. So now when we start reading project management guidelines provided by the Commission, they will tell you this is the copy of a graph explaining log frame approach, stating how you're supposed to start. By your first step should be stakeholder analysis. That says identifying and characterizing potential major stakeholders and assessing their capacity. And then you go to problem analysis, identifying key problems, constraints, opportunities, determining cause and effect relationships. And from the problems that you've identified that the stakeholders have, then as a reflection, from a problem tree, you come to an objective tree. And then you can identify which are the focal, the key objectives and how are they interdependent, and then you can focus on the important ones. And the question ahead of you is strategy. What with the available money, the people and teams and resources that we have in the time frame which is given, what is the best we can do, and this is how you come to your approach and you come to your strategy. So let me make a simulation very briefly for European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights. So first, and any external action, EPA works the same. Instrument for pre-accession, and again other instruments too. So let me make a simulation here. So here, I would ask you, could you tell me who are in an area, if a priority area for EIDHR would be marginalized groups. Let's say employment of marginalized groups, or inclusion of marginalized groups, protection and inclusion. So addressing their needs. Let's say that this is a project. It's certainly it is somewhere there. I'm close to it. And let's say that we're dealing with Ukraine or Cambodia. So what are we looking at? First, as a stakeholder, kind of stakeholder analysis. My first question to you would be, who are those people who are relevant? First, where are the formal authorities in this issue? In your countries, who's in charge to deal with the issues, with problems of marginalized groups? Who can you think of? There's no need to think too much. I mean, you need to have a ministry. Some ministries in charge in dealing with those issues. Then the ministry itself, at the top level, it's not the minister who's going to be caring about it. It has to have some department services and so on. So it has to be like a National Employment Service, maybe is in charge. Or in parallel to it, it might have offices on kind of local self-government levels, like a municipality level. So there must be some offices there dealing with those cases on case-per-case basis. Or maybe Ministry of Health is also involved. Then so you start listing from different areas, stakeholders, such as, let's see who are formal authorities there. So let's look at government institutions and public services and so on in charge. And then you create the first list. And then you say, well, are there people in the academic community who had done some research work, publications, and been lecturing about it and so on? So then you can also identify those centers of knowledge and experience and excellence. And then you take a look at NGO side of it. And then you start looking at all those who are involved in some way to promote those issues, to be active. It's not that difficult on a country level to identify all the actors who are active in some arena. Now, those who are already active with already using EU funding are available to financial transparency system. Again, many donors or many countries have similar portals with databases who had been using, for example, USAID instruments, who had been using different donors instruments. And again, you can find it. So I have a group here of a government official representative, exception of a Ministry of, I don't know, Labor, Ministry of Economy or whatever, Health. Then here I have several NGO, Association of those who are marginalized, and Association of People with Disability. I can also have here expert groups, some people who had devoted their life, like 15, 20, 30 years, addressing specific niches like how we work with people with this kind of disability, that kind of disability, and so on, providing this either through hospitals or through public consultancies or through academia, sharing that knowledge, so we need to identify who they are. And pretty much that's it. I mean, looking at groups, different stakeholders. So, please, yes.
I think it depends on which area we are working on. So we need to find out the commitment from the government department or ministry, which one that show high commitment. For example, in terms of anti-corruption, it's not all the government department or ministry willing to work on, except a few. So we need to see the commitment.
Very good. Okay, so you've let's change this topic into let's not work with marginals, let's work with anti-corruption. Okay. So let's use your case. So your point is valid.
Yeah.
Commitment. There has to be a formal authority on the issue.
Yeah.
Now, presumably, if you have a high level of corruption for some time, the formal authority is not performing according to its mission, objectives, and so on. They're just not delivering. They're not doing it. Whether they're interested to do their work, which they're formally supposed to be doing or not, apparently not, because of political pressures. So, but are they your relevant stakeholder or not? They are formally in charge for that. So, in terms of their power, given that they would like to implement something, how would you score them? I would score them as high power stakeholder. Again, they are the formal authority to report on corruption in the country on behalf of the government. So, in terms of their influence, is it high? It is. So they're high power, high influence. Now, whether they're committed to do their job appropriately, that's a different question. That's stakeholder analysis. So the first step is for you to list. They exist and they are a high power, high influence stakeholder. The second one, following this logic, it's called interventional logic, this methodology. Once you identified all those groups and factions, now I've already mentioned to you a different framework of thinking, which is adaptive leadership, looking at the whole system and looking at factions and placing them immediately into faction, which is actually, regardless of their formal front face, which says we are supposing they should reduce corruption, like I won't use your country's example, I use my country's example. It's a formal, the highest level of authority for fighting against corruption that's not working for 5 years. It's not operational at all. The government prevents it to work. It's delivering fake reports about it. The Commission nods their heads. For 5 years, European Commission pretends as this is not happening. Then there are kind of here and there, as you noticed in yesterday's negotiation session, here and there someone would say, well, you should maybe look at this. It's just the member states or the interest groups like US, Russia, China, and so on would severely control, of course, through another different mechanisms, those areas of interest where they have economic interest, but very narrowly. So they don't really care, in general, whether the whole society is functioning in institutions properly or not, as long as their interests are protected through the political agreements. So this is what we have. We have formally government saying we are doing this and so. We have informally them doing some kind of a deal making on a low level and whatever, with an incredibly high amount of corruption, crime, and so on, which is not even properly hidden at the moment. You can just by looking at what's happening in newspapers and media and so on, you can discover crime cases which are not processed at all. No one's paying attention about it. There's no one to raise the issue. So, but following the methodology, so what do we have to do? First, identify who are the formal authorities, who's involved, on whom we might have impact when we are promoting the issue of fighting against corruption. Well, now I've just mentioned, you will have an impact on the deals that the EU companies made with the present government, which are implemented through these corrupt schemes and agreements. Untransparent deals. So there are parties here in the EU involved in doing business. I assume there's similarity in your case. Also from US, also from Russia, also from China. It's not that transparently won the bid and so on. It's that they've gone to an official and made a deal and perhaps contributed to the corruption. I don't know whether in Ukraine is the same case, but I can assume that it is. So you're dealing with a sensitive issue. Now, you're starting to build up, the whole picture about the complexities here. So, if you want the EU formally to say, well, this is really bad what you're doing, it needs to be careful on, well, how are you going to then justify what had been happening in the last 5 years concerning these specific topics? And then you can look at economic trade and deals which were made by some companies and some projects and so on and so on. But yeah, this is how we start analysis. Sorry, just let me see. Then what you do is you start your problem analysis. Now, how you start your problem analysis? You go and talk to those people. Depending on their power and influence, you find a channel. So you need to get their own perspectives. From your perspective, the corruption is a problem. From my ministry's perspective in Serbia, it's not a problem. It's the way we live and work. This is how we're gaining our wealth. This is how we're securing our party's interests. This is how we're filling our pockets. As long as it lasts, good. So from your perception, it's a problem. From them, it's not. There is not. If you sit down with them, they'll make a deal with you. They'll ask you how much it costs for you to give a positive report. If it's relevant for them, if they would consider your report relevant at all. But if it's relevant, they'll try to deal. So this is the prevailing approach. Now, you need to talk with them about your own viewpoint and also probe and test on how they're perceiving this. The best way is for you to stay active, to survive this process and position yourself in such a way to orchestrate changes and lead them and make sustainable changes. It's not for you to be at the forefront, the one calling the government corrupt, but confronting those who are those groups here on the list of stakeholders, confronting them with those who are leading these bad practices, who have the very opposite attitude towards it. So first you go and talk to them and get a better clue on what they're planning to do. Second, and we call this project generator workshops. You will unlikely get a minister to commit to come to a project generator workshop and discuss a project with other stakeholders. It's more likely that his assistant or assistant of an assistant will come. And again, it's also not so likely that this assistant will be fully committed to the results. He will be searching, working in this kind of a culture and environment, he'll be searching for his own or his department or his boss interest in how we get something from it. So the way to get them together, those who are relevant for your topic, to get them to sit around the table, is to call them with an email saying like, there is an open call for, I don't know, 400, 500, 600,000 euros or whatever, something that might look attractive. And also the topic might seem very relevant for them, that will yield the result, as a result, one of the reports about the corruption or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. So, you get their attention. Then, in order for them not to take the topic from you, they try to do it on their own, without you, in order to commit to come to a meeting. You say, we also called, and then you list other high power, high interest stakeholders, other relevant players. And then they can't miss the meeting because they will feel that other relevant players are grouped already there. So they'll come to investigate what's happening. So then your role is ideally to confront, but not too much, you need to regulate this stress, to confront those who are paying the price of the corruption and those who are promoting and doing it, allowing it to flourish. So now if you confront their attitudes, this is where you're going to get the real problems, not those who you... Anyone can say, well, the corruption is generally bad, and then you list the textbook text why it is bad. Not those problems. Then you're going to get into a real problem, like maybe assistant minister is against corruption, but he can't step outside of the circle of trusted people who are taking the money, because if he does, he will not be trusted anymore. They are sharing the cake among themselves. And once he tried to step out because of some principles or something, first, they'll get rid of him. It's not anymore a loyal partner in a group that's governing. That's one of the issues. So if you try to differ on a value norm which is prevailing in the power center there, you'll be most likely get rid of. And then the second issue is like if you, well, some, I don't know, whoever on local, let's say because of the corruption, most money ends up where it shouldn't. It's centralized and ends up in the pocket of the governing loyal affiliates and allies. So those who are supposed to be getting the money are not getting the money, pursuing their own agendas. So if you ask them, so what's the problem? First you ask the formal authority, what's happening? He's going to deny that we have a high corruption. He's going to say, well, we have some extent, but those are particular cases and blah, 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 blah. And then you say, well, is this right? And you ask the other guy who's representing the side who's supposed to be getting money and not, and resources, and then visibility and power and so on. And then he says, no, this is not true at all. They are contributing. So the immediate conflict will raise tensions, but reveal the real problems. The guy is going to say, we had this action plan. I said, yes, but you have not delivered on that action plan. Nothing. It was not implemented. And then he's going to say, and we also have the task force for fighting against corruption. And then this guy will say, yes, and the task force is completely kind of chosen on a politically obedient or whatever control level, so they are not implementing stuff. And you start writing. So you say, you see, the highest authority here, problem one, is the regulating body on top of this, blah, 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 is not performing. The task force is recruited on basis of political obedience, suitability, or whatever, and so on. It is doing essentially like it's a governmental organization supporting corruption and so on. And then the P3 is we don't have an involvement of people. So the guy who's representing the other option, the different faction, and the other guys also representing the different faction, they're excluded, they're not included, they're not getting visibility, they're not getting a chance to influence the process. So we say majority of actors here are excluded from monitoring corruption here. And the problem four, they don't have knowledge, skill, resources, if they are included, or even those guys in the task force, or how to really measure, how to catch it, how to monitor, how to act once they've identified, where to report, how to, once it's reported, first how to save the security and safety of the guy reporting it, and then on the other side how to react while preserving the safety and stability of the system. So those are the problems. Let's say I identify all problems. Now the step 3 in the methodology. I know you would want me to discuss deeper your own particular case, but we'll be doing that when we deal with your project and describe a methodological approach. So the next question for me would be, for all of those problems, and those are real problems in your case, they're very real, because you're discussing, this task force doesn't have knowledge, skill, adequate human resources. The other guys who really have experience, knowledge, and will and motive to fight it, they're excluded. They're not given a chance to participate. Nobody is going to give them media attention. Nobody is going to include their inputs into formal reports and so on. So that's a problem. Then another problem, even if they're given access to what? Fake reports, accounting, government accounting, and so on. The fixed, the invented budget lines and so on. So no, this is not where you're going to catch corruption. It's on a different level. It's down there. So you need to have local guys involved at the local level. At any level where the money is spent, you need to have those people of integrity with motive to take part, but you need to empower them. How? By giving them some skills, insights and tools, how they can spot, where they can report it. And then you start building a real base. So, objectives. For each one of those problems, you have objective 1, objective 2, objective 3, objective 4, saying, well, the top level body does not work. So we're going to work on 2 parallel issues. We're going to be strengthening the top level body without hope that it will ever work until we have the present government that doesn't have an interest and stake in fighting corruption, nor until we mobilize international community to act in a different manner. So until we make pressure on the EU companies that are making corrupt deals in our country, until we make pressure with the US companies who are actually supporting the government in preserving and continuing corruption, until we make pressure with the Russian, Chinese and other companies who are actually contributing to this, you're not going to get change. So, until we had all of that, so you can't tell them that you're going to endanger millions of dollars or euros that they are getting as an added value for not respecting local regulation, environment regulation, labor regulation, or whatever else they're buying through corrupting governments. So you're not gonna get their immediate yes, no problem, we're gonna do it. You need to make a pressure out of it. So say, and that's what I mentioned. Like if you want to avoid a case of having incredible damages on your company and business, maybe you want to contribute to this action and maybe you want to change slightly a little bit your practices. It's fair. You're not asking for a radical change. You're asking them to give a little bit, you know, and they might gradually accept, and you might gradually build up some success. So we're going to be building the capacity of this task force. This is one too, but we don't really. They're never going to allow it to be fully effective because it's going to be economically tremendously dangerous for everyone involved. And we're going to build a parallel capacity of something which is half governmental, supporting government, but essentially independent. So we need a structure. Then the second problem here, they don't have within the task force qualified force. Where are we going to employ and recruit and mobilize in so many volunteers who will be then funded for their skills education, training and so on in various issues on various levels. How to control work in municipality, how to control work in ministry, how to control money going to the media, how to control money going to the elections, how to control this, how to control that, whatever you identified as the key topics and so on. By bringing the expertise from one of the other groups here, those who have been studying it for 15 years, they know something about it, so you might ask them to pinpoint for you where are those critical, the focal problems, and the areas where we want to have more education capacity, resources, and so on and so on. And then, after that, now you need to ensure that, of course, government will try to either kind of stop it, or take control of it or something, so you invite them, yeah, sure, you're welcome. And you make some kind of a deal so they they perceive as the benefit and have control. But this is again a challenging project design. So the objective is here also to keep them very much included and build up their capacity and so on. And at the fourth, the downside level, they all lack resources. They have their jobs, families to feed and so on and so on. So they can't devote a month or 2 or 3 fighting against corruption, you know, because it's a nice hobby. And the community will benefit from it. And alongside expose themselves to tremendous risk and danger to lose everything they have and their careers and to end up marginalized in jail or even accused in those kind of societies where you have high corruption and illegal practices at the top of the government. It's very easy that you become accused as a criminal and convicted as a criminal because you're fighting for the right cause. You're fighting against the prevailing system. So, now once you've identified all those, methodologically, what do you have? You have the European Commission, which is not severely committed to really eradicate corruption there, and is willing to give you, let's say, 300,000 euros for a 2 years project. And then you say, okay, I have those objectives here. After perhaps maybe 3 sessions of project generator workshops, you can fine-tune what are the objectives and activities which are necessary to tackle the major problems. And then you come to step 4, which is strategy. With those, let's say, 400,000 euros. With those people here whom I've met, I know them, I know that the guy in the government will be acting nicely, he'll be saying nice words that he doesn't mean, he'll be lying essentially, manipulating. He will not follow up in actions and deeds what he's saying that he will do. But yet you can't work without him. So you need to find where he's going to be involved and how. And how do we monitor once he's got the money? How empower and influence? How we prevent him to ruin our future efforts, to diminish the impact. So you need to envisage the ways in the project management, what are his roles. So we put some independent, ideally externally funded media to control his work every month or 2. But how do we present it to him? Not as a control, we present it as an opportunity for him to brag about how much he progressed in fight against corruption, how he accepts. But then he's committed to deliver reports on a 2-month basis, based on the criteria that you've set, not him. So those are the kind of design issues that then you need to think about in strategy, in your approach. But you only have 2 years, you only have those guys with very limited skill sets, knowledge, experience, time and whatever. And you only have 400,000 euros, which if you divide, at least you need to pay the government 1 or 150, 100 to allow you to work, to involve them at that level. So you're left with something like 250,000 to be distributed among real experts, and you need then to finance your own infrastructure, and then you need to finance this volunteer and work with the people with integrity who are willing to step into the risks of fighting against it, which eventually they might end up with, I don't know, 500 euros or 100 euros or 1,000 euros out of the project, and if they're smart, I would never accept it. For 1,000 euros to put your life at stake and be then labeled by the government, as a potential risk, and then to lose your career job in something, because we want to play as if we're fighting corruption, I would say sorry. And so you need to think also in ways on how to kind of keep them safe, and so on. And that's your strategy. And this is where I must wrap up the methodology. I've explained to you in a very detailed level methodology. The first part called logical intervention approach, logical framework approach, that will lead you, if you have now here, discuss the strategy.
Yes, can I, before moving on, just would like to get your advice. For example, now for the anti-corruption work, of course, working with the government is one of the things that we should focus on the supply side. At the same time...
Sorry. I see that, but I noticed this from the beginning of the discussion. Yes. I'm presenting a framework, methodology, how EU requires you to work in order for you to write a proposal that will be eligible for you to get the money. I'm not discussing the corruption case in your country, not now.
Okay.
So I can't step in deeper into discussing this because I'm lucky. I will gladly, but not in this moment. for me, the key point, I know that it's hard for you not to step into the concrete
Yes.
discussion about what's really bothering you. You're really doing it. You are at the forefront of changes and trying to deliver results. And I hope to contribute to that. And we'll design a project
Yeah.
together
Yeah.
on how to do it,
Yeah.
addressing those issues that you'd like to address. But methodologically, what's important for me is to realize what is a necessary set of steps to take. So you need to deal with, you need to have a stakeholder registry and then analyze them. The best way to analyze them is talk with them. With some of them, you'll be able to talk through some sort of conferences, generator workshops or something like that. The best way to get them to commit to come is, oh, we have this opportunity to get a little money from the commission, and you will have the opportunity to do advance your own visibility, whatever agenda is, and they'll come. And the other important guys will be there. So you get them together, and then you play a little bit with tension to extract what are the real key issues, what's underlying, what's beneath the surface, the documents, the stuff that's happening in reality. Then you identify real problems.
Sorry to interrupt. The problem come first or stakeholder come first?
Stakeholder.
But
Stakeholders
you're
for
gonna
the issue. Stakeholder for the issue. You say, we want to deal with corruption. That's the issue.
Yeah.
And you start with who's formal in charge. What are the other stakeholders
Yeah,
involved?
but if you don't identify issue first, then your stakeholder gonna be all over the place.
Not yes, but not that much. You see, you say, yes, you're right. You're right. When we start dealing with it, if I start doing methodologically appropriate, if I start saying, okay, so everywhere in the country we want to fight corruption and so, just like who's formally there, and you see there's a ministry, but within each, down to the level of municipality, there are at least 100 specific issues of offices, practices, and so on and so on. Yes, that's true. That's true. But then again, okay, so I have this one structure, I have some good practices there. I have another structure in academia. Do we have any professors, those who have been researchers, those who were active in the topic? In the expert community, do we have some renowned, impactful NGOs? Typically, those who are really impactful are marginalized. The government doesn't want you to reach them at all. They are fighting for survival. They're there in the grassroots. And they're not getting any money from the government and the national community because they're doing real work. They're going to put the big deals in danger for the EU, for the US, for China, for Russia, for anyone who's corrupting the government in order to get benefits in the labor, in the respect for environment, in the whatever, getting the extra profits, in allowing banks to do whatever, in doing the typical things, what we're typically doing with developing countries. So, in those games, they are not really getting the money, but okay, so you need to identify the external issues, you need to identify the real issues on who's doing what, and then you're right, you're gonna get a huge list. But once you've done that, and it's not gonna take you more than a week to get to that list, it's not such a huge deal. On a country level or regional level, I mean, I know it from experience, it's really, it's a 1 week's work to get to the list. People, organizations, and everyone involved. And then you say, well, those groups, the whole group here is essentially irrelevant for me. Governmental, non-governmental NGOs, like, you know, guys from the government, supported by the governments, essentially to echo and replicate whatever government wants and get some money and friends and so on. So I don't want to speak with them here at this stage identifying the problem. I know that they are part of the problem. and provided another government comes and gives them money, they'll act the same. So, and so on and so on. So you start analyzing stakeholders on their power, influence, attitude, and you see who do you need to have on your project generator workshops. Now, my advice to you in terms of the approach is secure to have the most high power, high interest stakeholders there and you're gonna be awarded the project. Because there's nobody else to get it. If you're involved in your proposal, the formal authority and the leading association of experts or those who are casualties or industrial groups who are interested to advance the issue or whatever, well, certainly you're going to get the money. That does not necessarily mean that something good will come out of it. Because if they're involved in the leading corruption, they're going to just treat it as another treat. Like, oh, excellent, we're getting more, half a million more to divide among ourselves. And they'll do it. So you need to also, when you design a strategy, you need to figure out, looking at their typical behaviors, approaches, and attitudes, and so on, you need to figure out how to design a project in their roles in such a way for you to really deliver the results. And this is a process. It's called interventional logic, and I use corruption as a case. I can get you in touch with some people who are also very experienced in this and doing it really in different. I'm contributing to their efforts as much as I can and getting them in touch with here with the commission who are dealing with similar things. So I'll be happy to expand a little bit of your network in the area. Anyway, so but methodologically, this is where I need to stop now in explaining this methodology. This will lead you to what we call a logical framework, where out of this, through this process, you're gonna have the problem tree. You're gonna first, of course, you're gonna have the context and stakeholders, and then you have the problem tree, which is kind of reflected like in a mirror in the objective tree. Professionals would really create the problem tree and the objective tree, but in reality, we extract much more relevant information through the direct communication and our intelligence work, the data gathering and processing and interpreting the data that we're getting from the papers. That's like 60%, but the crucial parts of the data come from people and their colleagues and their secretaries and the organizations they work with, to get really down to the level of their personal driving power motives, like are they motivated by power, are they motivated by position, are they preserving position, are they interested in this, and what's their agenda, so you know who to place where in the project. Anyway, so that's one. If you would try to replicate this model on a research, technological development, innovation project in Horizon, what would happen? So I tell you, you need to fight crime, terrorism threats, let's say, on critical infrastructure in Europe. And we want to be focusing now mostly on ICT, but we also can't neglect and isolate ICT as the only area, so we need to also consider whatever is relevant. We have to be in focus and so on. And then I tell you, can you identify stakeholders? You can't. I mean, you can, but very roughly, at the level of, there are at least 28 countries, 27 countries that you need to be looking at. And then critical infrastructures, and you need to be looking at the huge diversity of the ICT infrastructure present, and then you need to look at very different cultures and threats and so on and so on. So you can't really do in-depth down to the level analysis. What you can be doing, you can start from here. As defragmenting, by looking at the call text, why the Commission had nominated that topic, what the description of the challenge and the problem that the Commission perceives important. So how they've structured that, what the scope you want to have there, and then out of that you're going to have your work packages, you're going to have experience, necessary activities in order to respond to the challenge, you're going to have capacity in terms of resources, networks, whatever is needed. So you to get who are the best partners, what is the best consortium to create in order to address this. And then from them you're going to get deeper insights for their areas. Now we're going to simulate first, because within the group the most experienced proposal writer in Horizon is here. So we're going to simulate one topic analysis, one call analysis, and try to create a work breakdown structure. As the next step, again, I'd like to invite you for both after we finish that. For you, ideally, why I think it's relevant for you as well. Because let's find a topic that maybe you might be also interested in. First, master the methodology. Secondly, in many of the upcoming calls, which will be published in the next month, you'll find a space to contribute. So understanding what roles, how you can contribute is critical. So we're starting here in problem analysis, opposed to starting from here. And then we work our way backwards in call analysis. Now, let me see. This is an old document. It's a draft work program, but it's several months old. Do you have any preferred topic that you're working right now on?
Well, I don't have. We are covering the whole spectrum of possible calls.
So I'll scroll down and let's just let's do a cold call. Let's choose one of the topics. So for the next period between 2018 and 2020, the draft work program envisaged for topic, work program number 14, Secure Societies, Protecting Freedom and Security of Europe and its Citizens, under the Horizon 2020 umbrella. Those are topics which will most likely be in the final version. So most likely we're going to have in a month's time this as published calls, open calls for proposals. This is how a draft work program looks like. Now, the first part says, called Protecting the Infrastructure in Europe, the heading. So the first one is prevention, detection, response, mitigation of a combined physical and cyber threats to critical infrastructure in Europe. Security for smart cities and soft targets in smart cities. The second part says disaster resilient society, so we want to build up the resilience. Human factors, social, societal, organizational aspects of disaster resilient societies. Second call topic is technologies for the first responders. Third one, pre-normative research and demonstration for disaster resilient societies. So the last one, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear cluster. Next topic is fight against crime and terrorism. Human factors, social, societal and organizational aspects to solve issues in fighting against crime and terrorism. Technologies to enhance the fight against crime and terrorism. Information and data stream management to fight against cybercrime and terrorism. Explosives, detection, intelligence, forensics. Then we have border and external security, human factors, social, societal, and organizational aspects of border and external security. Technologies to enhance border and external security. Demonstration of applied solutions to enhance border and external security. And then there are topics on general matters, which are defined as pan-European networks of practitioners and other actors in the field of security. Common requirement specification for innovative advanced systems to support security. Pre-commercial procurement of innovative advanced systems to support security. And pre-commercial procurement of innovative solutions to enhance. Cyber and digital privacy goes to cyber security preparedness, range of economic, cyber range and economics, management of cyber attacks and other risks, digital security and privacy for citizens and small and medium enterprises and micro enterprises, cyber security, electrical power and energy systems, digital security, privacy, accountability in critical domains, sectors, cooperation and international dialogues in cyber security, and so on. and then that's it, pretty much. And then for each one of those, you have a very similar structure. It's an, you see, for any call, you have first specific challenge, and then you have scope, and then below you'll find the expected impact somewhere. Yes, here, there, and then there is a type of action. So the first one they want to do is an innovative action, and then the second one again, specific challenge, scope, and so on. So, what would your preference? Let's do it together. Let's analyze one topic and create out of it a work breakdown structure and see what we need to do.
Good. Which one? I don't have any specific preference.
Well, where do you feel most comfortable in terms of your area of expertise and previous experience?
I don't have any problems. I usually cover the fight against crime and terrorism, and also border and external security. So it depends of.
Let's go. Shall we go on this one or this one?
Which one it could be more interesting
For the
other
group.
participants? Yeah.
Well, okay, so it's your choice. Do you want to analyze fight against crime and terrorism, human factors, social, societal, organizational aspects to solve issues in fighting against crime and terrorism, or border security and external security, again, human factors, social, societal, organizational aspects of border and external security?
The first one's okay. I
The
mean,
first
we
one.
just want to see the model anyway.
Okay,
it's
good.
not gonna-
Okay, so it will be 22. 22. We're almost there. 21.
It starts like here.
Good. Good. That's it. Okay. So let me then now read to you what the Commission asks us to do under the heading "Fight Against Crime and Terrorism." There's an intro supposedly providing a context and background. The ambition of the activities under this heading: mitigate potential consequences of crime and or terrorism related incidents, or to avoid them. To this end, new technologies and capabilities are required. They should address the fight against the prevention of crime, including cybercrime, illegal trafficking, and terrorism, including cyberterrorism, along with understanding and tackling terrorist ideas and beliefs. Human factors and the social context should be taken into account while respecting human rights and privacy. So, that's the intro. Now, again, it doesn't tell you a lot. It narrows down a little bit the context, and we're stepping deeper into the subject, defining a problem. So this, again, specific challenge description will tell you more about what the proposal itself needs to address, but in terms of what the EU had identified as problems. The free and democratic EU society, based on the rule of law, mobility across national borders, globalized communication, and finance infrastructure provide many opportunities to the people. However, they come along with by risks related to crime and terrorism, a significant number of which cross-border impacts within the EU. Security is a key factor to ensure high quality of life and to protect our infrastructure, to preventing and tackling common threats. The EU must prevent, investigate, and/or mitigate the impact of criminal acts while protecting the fundamental rights of citizens. The consistent effort made by EU members and the EU to that effect are not enough, especially when criminal groups and their activities extend far beyond national borders. So it says a bit more now, scope of the topic and the proposal that we need to develop in response to this challenge. The Lisbon Treaty enables the EU to act and to develop itself in an area of freedom, security and justice. The EU Security Union is now in the building and requires EU-wide approach to security that integrates prevention, investigation, mitigation capabilities in the area of the fight against crime. The globalization of communications and finance infrastructure allows for crime to develop and take new forms. Trafficking human beings for all forms of exploitation purposes is a serious and organized crime, often with cross-border dimension, violating fundamental rights of the individuals and creating a security challenge. Prevention of child sexual abuse and exploitation in the area, another area where research is actually needed, acutely needed, sorry. The use of the internet as a platform for child sex offenders to communicate, store and share child sexual exploitation material and to hunt for new victims continues to be one of the internet's most abhorrent aspects, sorry. Cyber criminality as a whole is not satisfactorily understood nor properly addressed. The constantly expanding attack surface combined with the ever-increasing number of attack vectors requires a more structured approach. Radicalization is yet another challenge of our society that requires a multidisciplinary approach, with policy recommendations and practical solutions to be implemented by a variety of policymakers and practitioners. And it says, proposed approaches need to rely on existing knowledge and exclude prior failed approaches. The societal dimension of fight against crime and terrorism must be at the core of the proposed activities. Proposals should be submitted by consortia involving relevant security practitioners and civil society organizations, each under only one of the following subtopics. Now the first subtopic, and let's analyze only one of them. New methods to prevent, investigate, mitigate trafficking of human beings. New methods to prevent, investigate, mitigate child sexual exploitation. Underlying the drivers of cyber criminality and new methods to prevent, investigate, and mitigate cyber criminal behavior. And the last one, developing comprehensive and multidisciplinary, multi-agency approaches to prevent and counter violent radicalization in the EU. I think maybe this one is interesting, the radicalization. Oh,
Depends on probably because colleagues from Cambodia are more familiar with human rights.
Maybe, yes.
Can cover also the first one about trafficking.
Yes, why not? Trafficking of human beings. Okay, so let's go to the subtopic one. Preventing the phenomenon, reducing the demand for all forms of exploitation in trafficking chain, legal and illegal sectors, are important aspects of preventing this crime. Analysis of possible involvement of organized crime groups implicating trafficking of human beings and other crimes as well, money laundering, smuggling and so on, is encouraged. This is subtopic, and this is how it's defined. That's the beginning and the end of it. And then the Commission, this is common for all subtopics. It says proposals should lead to solutions developed in compliance with the European societal values, including privacy of fundamental rights, societal aspects, perception of security, possible side effects of technological solution, societal resilience, have to be addressed in a comprehensive and thorough manner. The Commission considers that proposal requesting a contribution from to above 5 million, I guess it's a draft, so it's not still decided, would allow this specific challenge to be addressed appropriately. Nonetheless, this does not preclude submission of selection proposal requesting other amounts. So it's around 5 million proposal. Expected impact. On a medium term, improved and consolidated knowledge among EU law enforcement agencies' officers on the issues addressed in the topic. Exchange of experience among the EU enforcement agencies about human social and societal aspects of security problems and their remedies. Policy making toolkits for security policy makers to support the establishment of a European security model. Toolkits for, again, LEAs, legal enforcement agencies, and or civil society organizations validating against practitioners' needs and requirements to facilitate their daily operations. And on the long term, what we want to achieve is a European common approach for assessing risks and threats and identifying and deploying relevant security measures, while taking into account legal and ethical rules of operation as well-being and cost-benefit considerations, and support towards the implementation of the European Security Union by strengthening the perception by citizens of the EU as an area of freedom and justice and security. And this will be addressed, lastly, as a research and innovation action. And by definition, I explained, I think, 2 days ago, yes, on Tuesday, research and innovation would include research and innovation type of an action, includes in its activities, generation of new knowledge, and also typically, so it means that there's some basic research involved. Generation of new knowledge implies research on that, and then we have also the applied research, and then it ends with whatever is expected in this set of listed impacts. And in here, for example, when you say toolkits for legal enforcement agencies and civil society validated against practitioners' needs, means that we need to obviously design something, and we need to test it, and we need to validate it as well, right? So this is the extent. And then before also we have a request in terms of expected impact, giving us a hint on where on this side of the project the scope ends. It says what we want to have. We want to have toolkits for policy makers, for security policy makers, to support the establishment of a European security model. Meaning, so we don't want to have policy recommendations on a EU level addressing the Commission's new policy for something. We want to address that too, but we want to address diversity of national policymakers through some tool that will help them adjust their own local national policies and harmonize them with whatever we now perceive as a EU security model. So this is where our scope ends, in giving them something which we hope will affect, it will be applicable on their side. Yeah. How would you start in analyzing this call and designing this project?
Okay. First of all, there are a lot of informations in this call. It is a wide explained topic for Horizon 2020. Sometimes we used to see more abstract descriptions or more generic calls that it is quite difficult to understand what they are waiting for us. And this is a problem because, no, this is good, this is a good one example because it's based on the situation and the incidents of the previous 2 years. So it is more updated on daily reality, because the previous one, the two previous work programs, 14, 15 and 16, 17 are was written before even we have
Migration crisis.
yes, the migration crisis, the evolution of ISIS-Daesh, and the crisis, some of them even before the crisis in Ukraine. So they are missing a lot of really important security events. This one is better because it includes all those events and is more updated on reality, and it has also the reference to security union. This is quite important. So, as Bosco said from the first day, if we want the core documents to see what is happening, where is EU stands now at the moment, we need to search for the European agenda on security and for the purpose of the security union. Those are the two big strategic documents. Secondly, it tells us a lot about the subtopics. So if you are an NGO or research institute or a governmental body or even a law enforcement agency, you need to choose a subtopic. You cannot submit a proposal that try to catch it all. And human trafficking and child abuse and radicalization and cyber, you need to pick one of them. So in each topic you can submit a different proposal. There is no penalty that you have to submit only one proposal in this call. You can submit one proposal in each subtopic. So going deeper in this case, you need to choose the subtopic. This is also quite important. If we choose human trafficking, let's say, there are also other documents, because we need to know quite well what are the policies of the EU in the field. So we need to see what is happening, where EU stands, and to prepare a possible argument about the future, because this is new knowledge. We need to provide them with new policies, with new ideas, with new toolkits. So if we choose also human trafficking, we need also to read carefully the action plan and the EU directive on human trafficking. So to take the full picture, the whole idea about EU policy in the field. This is also quite important. So if we see the call there, before the expected impact, please. Could you?
Yes, please. You can scroll down, up and down at your preference. You need to use the. I can tell me what you want me to do now.
To find the subtopic about trafficking.
Sure, of course. Just
This,
4, 2, 1.
One. Okay, good. So our subtopic says about new methods to prevent, investigate, and mitigate. So we need to answer. We try to answer to three of them. Not only we need to cover prevent, so we need pre-action, we need something before human trafficking, so we're searching for root causes, we're searching for action to tackle the whole phenomenon of human trafficking. Investigate, this one is more law enforcement agency duty, task, so we're covering the typical security duties and law enforcement duties, and of course mitigate, which is the final stage. So we are searching, we have two options here. The first option is that we believe that we have a really good and excellent idea, and we will focus only in one of those three. So if we have a really excellent idea about prevention, and we believe that the evaluators, in some cases before that in some cases we don't, not in all the cases, we don't know exactly how the evaluators will treat the proposals and what kind of proposals we will have. We have possibilities that in each subtopic is being finally funded only one proposal, so they are searching for a big proposal covering all the possible aspects, but also we have experiences from cases with a really specific and targeted proposal to one dimension that is also funded. So it depends of the budget balances among the other subtopics and the whole secure society, because this is the way they decide how they will fund. First of all, they are evaluating at the first level. You need to take a grade up to 10%, and not 10%, 10. Finally, the excellence is 15. You need to take 10 in order to be evaluated and to treat it for a possible funding. So they receive for all the work program, the open calls, up proposals first evaluated upper to 10, and then they decide how many they will fund in each topic. So that's why there is not a clear information in the work programs about how many proposals. It depends. Some cases it is funded one. The mid estimation is about 3 proposals. In some cases, 2 to 3 proposals. So
Just to add, to very important meaning, that on numerous occasions, most occasions, you're not competing for the second or third place. There are no.
yeah.
So you need to write the best proposal. You
best.
have to pick the best.
That's very, very important, as Bosco said. So also quite important is that the success rates are quite low, because there are a lot of proposals. Some cases there is lower to 10%, because we have about 40 or 50 proposals, good proposals, most of them, and they finally award one proposal. So it is very, very competitive, the field in Horizon 2020.
So we pick the subtopic.
Yeah, you pick the subtopic. It is
Is
quite
it, so when we design proposal, is it for a specific EU state or for the EU member state in general?
Good question. First of all, Horizon 2020, it is a completely different funding mechanism. It's not like anything else. So Horizon 2020, it is asking by its designing for EU spectrum or international dimension. So the consortiums here are between 15 to 25 participants, different entities, from big industries like such as Airbus or Thales or IBM, any big industry from the field of security, space, or even new technologies, because it is asking for new technologies. You can see state organizations, ministries, a lot of police forces, because I will go also here, because there is a really, really important for this kind of topic case. Universities, RDOs, research and technology organizations, NGOs, quite important, because here it says, also could you a little bit
Yes.
in the next page?
Expected impact.
Yes, in the expecting impact, yes, quite. Here.
Yes,
It says here
midterm evaluation.
toolkits for LIAS and/or civil society organizations. Here, if you read it carefully, it rings a bell for you. That it is, all of them, they're generic. They're covering the whole spectrum. They're talking about knowledge among EU law enforcement agencies, exchange of experience here, policy making toolkits for security policy makers, blah, 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 blah. But here, it says about toolkits for LIAS and civil society organizations. And I will go back again. So, first of all, you need to prepare a really EU-wide consortium. So, at least 10 countries from EU. This is the lowest possible scenario for preparing a proposal. Also, you need to be balanced. It is not a success story to have, I am from Greece, or Nikolai is from Ukraine, or you're from Cambodia.
You have to be.
If you are preparing a proposal and you have, let's say, 6 organizations from Cambodia or from Greece, it is not a success story. You need to be balanced. You can have 2, mainly 3 possible entities from your country, because you are the coordinator, and in some cases it is easier for you to motivate a ministry or to motivate a law enforcement agency, but you need to avoid to have also 2 universities, 1 small medium enterprise. So in Horizon 2020, to be successful, you need small medium enterprises also. It is a success story to have 1 or 2 small medium enterprises, and also you need public bodies, especially in secure society. You need police forces. That's why it said law enforcement agencies. It is quite important.
To build up a little bit, so in subject area requiring different expertise, as he had mentioned. So there are those who had already worked and done something on trafficking or human trafficking, and it's stated in the text you need to take in consideration what was already achieved, but exclude those activities, approaches, and so on which failed. You need to demonstrate to know what did not
Yeah.
give results and what did give results. And then there's a range of expertise areas involved in the subject area. So how are the legal enforcement agency operating? What are the standard procedures? What are the new challenges with the new technologies? They're asking here again in terms of the ICT, more involvement of the ICT, so you need that expertise. You have a range of expertise involved. Now geography, meaning of what he just very nicely stated. If you typically, because we know each other, we might incline to just work among ourselves and then create a consortium like that. Is it fully responding to the text requirement? That's the first question. And if it's not covering and having an EU-wide impact, it's going to fail.
Yeah.
And then what usually also happens are regional, because typically people start from, in EU arena, they start from working on national or regional projects, and this is where their networks are best. And then they create two regional projects, and they don't consider that you might have evaluators coming from Western Balkan countries, Scandinavia, Mediterranean countries, Western EU, new member states, associated countries, and third countries, and they'll be there. And you need to have a balance. And from their perspective, if they read the topic, they will also partner types.
Yeah, exactly.
The diversity of those involved need to encompass, apparently, if we're going to enhance the communication between the legal enforcement agency, to provide the toolkit that they'll use, and also for the NGOs that they'll use, and so on. So we need to have public organizations, non-governmental organizations, expert community dealing with it, and the range of different entities, and also for all the expected inputs to be counted. So that all needs to be well balanced.
So this meaning that it is in addition to the each country EU strategy, right? For example, in Cambodia now the country strategy is 2014 to 2018. So horizontal here is something different, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Horizon
So-
is a funding mechanism.
Okay.
So let's say it is somehow it is the fund covering the EU research strategy.
Okay.
So this is the document. So that's why it covers any possible sector of EU policies, but mainly on research and innovation. It is not funding, let's say, equipment. It is not funding building infrastructures,
Sure.
and is not funding only training. It could be training a part of this kind, but it is not mainly funding training. It's not like structural funds and things like that. So it's why asking new knowledge. So it is quite important, as Bosco really put it in a graphical way, to keep all this in mind. So in secure societies, it is also from the most complicated topics, because there is a pre-requirement for participation in each consortium, depends on the call, from 3 to 5 law enforcement agencies. So if they are counting, and if you don't have the 3 or 5, depends on the call. In the final version of the draft program, you will find more explanation about the topic, and there you will see in secure societies that they are asking for law enforcement agencies. So another question, very important, is that without them, you will not be evaluated. The proposal, it will be totally rejected. Even you produce a really novel idea with 200 pages, they are just firstly counting about what they're asking. So this is also quite important, because during the period we have a really good idea, and it's very difficult, especially for newcomers in Horizon 2020, the organizations that they don't have established contacts with law enforcement agencies. And you have the big dilemma that we are working on a proposal, and when we have a really restricted and good proposal, we're trying to find and to motivate law enforcement agencies, or firstly, let's have a really good explained abstract, bring law enforcement agencies on our proposal, on our consortium, and then produce the proposal. From my experience, I have tackled both stories, and it is quite difficult both of them, because it is important in some cases that there is a handing of law enforcement agencies, and you are leaving away for the final days the proposal, and finally you find yourself writing about 15 hours per day and try to be not that generic and specified. So the best condition is that you need to be prepared for Horizon 2020. Those calls, it will be closed on the final days of August. So since you have the draft program and you have an experience, if you are Transparency International, let's say, so if you are tackling corruption, as Bosco said before, not in this topic, in some other topics behind, there is money laundering. So this could be the most suitable subtopic for your organization.
Yeah.
You can try on human trafficking, but you can add as a small different participant to other. You need other organizations. Since we're discussing about human trafficking, we are searching for, of course, for law enforcement agencies. We need police forces. We are searching for victims organization. It's quite important. Say civil society organizations. It is Transparency International or more big organizations as European Public Law Organization. It is they are welcome, but they are not the added value. Here, if you need organizations with their duty on human trafficking. So EU-wide, different type of organizations, and finally, more focused organizations you need in this kind. You need to be balanced between civil society organizations. This is the third requirement in this case. So then, if you have covered those about the project structure, but also keep in mind that although we start the discussion with those conditions and with the consortium formation, this is the second or third step. Firstly, you are preparing an idea, that you need to have a really good idea, and you will start, since if we said that my organization is very experienced on Horizon 2020 programs. We're involved in more than 30 projects. So we are also coordinators of 5 proposals. So we don't have, let's say, the dilemma that what we are going to do. To have an idea and ask Bosco to read our idea to tell us that what type of organization will be the coordinator. Some cases, you can be the coordinator, but if you are not capable with a lot of pre-requirements, economic stability, viability of your financial resources, your experience on projects, even you are, let's say, the Minister of Interior in France. You are really one of the most big ministries around Europe. But if you don't have any experience on this, and if you don't have a financial stability on your economic figures, probably they will not give you the opportunity to be a coordinator. They will treat it as a weakness to the project. So it is, first of all, you need an idea. Secondly, you need to imagine your role, your organization role in this consortium. You will be the coordinator, it is possible. The majority of cases for a newcomer, it is impossible. Even he can build a consortium, it is quite difficult to be treated. So, firstly, you need to be part of other consortiums and to take the experience of preparing a consortium. Thirdly, you need to find the proper way. Since you have an idea, you cannot sell it easily. You need to sell it with the proper way. First of all, that's why in some cases guys like Bosco or Andrea are quite important to help you, since you don't have the experience, to find the best way to approach consortium in some cases. Because since I am, let's say, Airbus, I am suitable to any kind of proposals here to prepare a tech solution or any other big company, let's say Samsung. If you approach me, you need to
Convince
take,
me.
yeah, to convince me first of all. If you see that I am easily convinced, so you have a really good idea,
Yeah.
and I will try to take your idea,
Yeah.
because I am capable for coordinator and quite experienced,
Yeah.
and to give you a really small role that it is not quite good for you. You can start work like this, but if you have, let's say, an idea about a toolkit, that you have, let's say, a scoreboard, a different idea about the identification, a protocol of identification, you need to ask them that I want to lead this work package. So to be to a higher position than other participants. So it is a matter of negotiations in some cases.
So this is something like the coordinator, the participant in each country try to look for the coordinator, access to the coordinator, showing we have ability to do that work, so on and so on. This is something is a little bit opposite to, let's say, the country EU call for proposal. The consortium is, try to reach out to the partner, the co-applicant, whom the consortium is thinking that they are capable,
Yeah.
doing
Well,
to knock the door.
Yes, this is the other way. You can find both.
Yeah. The logic typically, just try to rephrase this.
Okay.
The logic typically, which we see in developing countries, which we see on different schemes,
Okay. Yeah.
is that you have an idea and you
Yes.
go around
Yeah.
and search who might be interested, and you try to sell or promote this idea to donors.
Sure. Okay.
That's
Yeah,
the
way
usual
around,
one.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
you kind of
Yeah.
now this is different. Just the logic is different because here you have EU giving you here 5 million for this, and there are so many. If I would count the possible consortium leaders for this one,
Yeah.
I'd come to a number of something like above 100, between 100 to 200 organizations around the EU with references, capability management, and so on that could go for this, possibly. And maybe we're gonna, as a result, have something around 15, 10, 6 to 20 proposals. And then, so you're facing a different situation, different arena. So you have quite a few of those
Sure.
there, groups, teams,
Yeah, yeah.
who already know how to work with each other, who will be competing for this one.
Yeah.
So the way how they might perceive you as a newcomer is first you're welcome because the Commission
Sure.
imposes that you are welcome and the rules that you have to be there. Then the second is, are you the best choice? Would you be an asset in others consortium? So and then again, what he had mentioned is giving you in what kind. If you're an asset to our consortium, that's great. Now, what kind of role we'll give you, what percentage of budget, that is a different question.
Exactly. So it is, okay, I describe you the possibility that if you are a newcomer, if you are, let's say, Transparency International in Italy,
Yeah.
and you don't have any previous experience,
Yeah.
and you have some friends in France or in Brussels or in Greece, how you would try to be better position your organization. But let's leave it a little bit early. So since you have, let's say, the possibilities for the consortium, you need an idea. So in order to find the better idea, or even if you have an idea on corruption, let's say, because it's your daily work, or about legal procedures in Ukraine, or about the legal cooperation between EU and Ukraine about some directives. So you will have an idea based on your research or your experience or on everything. And because it is a really common problem, you have an idea or you have a small project, and you read this call for proposals and say, no, yes, this is the way to fund my idea. There are a lot of proposals, good ideas, but they don't treat the hidden lines among the calls, and finally they totally failed. because they are not asking about a really novel and a really innovative idea, let's say an experiment, but they're just asking for something a few miles ahead from what is now in the moment of the knowledge. So you need to really carefully read and read again the expected impact. This is the most important case, because you will find what they are waiting to get, to receive as final deliverables, and also when you will prepare the proposal, the expected impact is the most crucial part of the proposal. It looks easier in some cases because somehow it is guiding you. It said that what are the societal impacts, so yes, what are the dissemination impact, you have some guidance, but it is quite difficult to build measurable variables to impact. So they're not just asking about how it will, the society will profit from your proposal, but how we can measure it. That's quite important in impact. So that's why you will see here. So here there are 4 expected impacts on medium term. The first one is said about improve and consolidated knowledge. So our idea, our proposal, our new knowledge must be improved, so not basic knowledge. So we need, first of all, to find in the most exhausted way what is the knowledge now in the field about human trafficking. So what the other previous successful proposals running and funded by EU said about human trafficking. This is quite important because EU will not fund again a similar proposal. In some cases, if we don't search about previous proposals, and especially ongoing proposals, we will duplicate in somehow a proposal, even we don't do it with your, with our will, in some cases, because it is based on our ignorance. But if I am an evaluator, I will reject the proposal because I know that Bosco Initiative is running this proposal now, or it was a closed project, successful project before 3 years. So when you read improved, you need to find via CORDIS. There is a site, a website, a web-based of EU. It's CORDIS, CORDIS, when you will find all the projects of the previous 15 years somehow from FP5, we're now on FP8 somehow, Framework Program 8, from previous, let's say, 15 to 20 years, and you need to search with human trafficking. That's the best way to find the knowledge and to bring something improved. So, another crucial dimension it says here, 1, EU law enforcement agencies officers. Secondly, again in the second, EU law enforcement agencies, again. And finally, in the third bullet point, toolkits for law enforcement agencies. So, in the 3 out of the 4 expected impacts, it's said here about law enforcement agencies. What are law enforcement agencies? Police, municipal police, prosecutors. So we need to keep in mind that our solution, that our idea, that our product needs to help them. So if we said about law enforcement agencies, it couldn't be something about social sciences and only. So about how the society will profit from our idea. So we need to have something to taking seriously, really seriously into consideration law enforcement agencies. So we need to mapping the role of law enforcement agencies in human trafficking. As it said before, in prevention. So how law enforcement agencies participate in prevention. Prevention is not only a LEA duty. We can see here civil society organizations, we can see there are victims society, municipal services, social service of the state, so a number of different actors in prevention. but also investigation, it is only a matter of law enforcement agency. So if he said here, we need to cross-check some cases. It said in the title, investigation, prevention, investigation, mitigation, and if we have, let's say, a dilemma about focus more on prevention or investigation, here we can find a solution. If we need to tackle, by all means, also investigation. There is no other way to provide law enforcement agencies with toolkits. So, law enforcement agencies, quite important. Also, among EU, this is also important, and it answers your question about how many participants from which countries. The most, the best. Here it will be more successful to have 15 organizations for 15 member states than to have, let's say, 5 from 10. So we need to cover the most possible the EU-wide spectrum in this case. And we need to keep the balance between, it is not possible to have, because some cases, some consortiums, in order to tackle EU-wide, they are preparing a proposal with 28 or 30 participants. This is not a success story. Although in some cases, some proposals like this are submitted, are funded. It is quite difficult to manage a proposal. And also you see, let's say, participants with small roles. Let's say we can have the Bar Association of Kiev with 10,000 euros. It is not a really good role in Horizon 2020. Here, a typical budget, a good budget that it describes an important role is about 100,000. It is easy to have, because the coordinator, it usually goes for 300,000 or 500,000, it depends on the role. So to be a more and important and an active role, because you have just 10,000, it is in some cases 2 or 3 months implementation of a project. We're talking about 36 months. So keep in mind that you need, but it is about budgeting. So you need to have EU-wide in these cases. Secondly, experiences. It is very, very important. So what it said, this point for us, we need to find a way to gather experiences. From whom? From law enforcement agencies personnel. So what we need? Probably a focus group, a workshop, a questionnaire, a storyboard about their experience. About what? About human, social and societal aspects of security problems. So we need to have, by all means, something that can grasp the experience from law enforcement agencies about human, social and societal aspects. We don't need also to ask them about how many traffickers they arrested or how many victims are in Cambodia or in Ukraine and Greece, but the stories behind the human, social and societal dimensions. Another story. So you are getting ideas about what you will prepare. Probably here, networking between EU law enforcement agencies. Here, workshops or focus groups with experiences. And finally, a comparative study. And finally, you are reaching the policy making toolkits. Here we are going deeper and we are going to tangible deliverables. So what we will produce on a matter of, we are reaching to innovation field. The first two are about research and things like that. Here we need innovation. So policy making toolkits for security policy makers to support the establishment of the European security model. It is quite tricky and not helpful at all for my perception. So you need to find what is the European security model. We need to search behind in a strategy of 2010, it is the strategy of internal security strategy of EU, building a European security model to see what are the ideas behind it, how they describe the European security model. and to cross-checking with the security union what we have now. And you need, as Bosco said before, policy-making toolkit for security policymakers. You need to tackle not only the European dimension, but also the national dimension. So we need to produce a toolkit. What is a toolkit? There are two words, tool and kit. So the toolkit should support a tool. We need to produce something that can help who? The security policymakers. In what? In policy making. So we need a policy making application, let's say, in some cases. We need to improve policy making in this field. How? That's where we need technology. That's where we need applications, methodologies. It could be not only something tangible, because in RIA, research and innovation actions, as Bosco said before, we're not reaching a really high level of technology. We're something in the middle between 5 to 6. EU is measuring the technology readiness level in some products from 1 to 10. 10 is a higher version. It is not suitable for here. We are stopping here at number 8. So it is something ready, validated, and it is ready to produce with a commercial value. At the moment we are not reaching this. We are searching for something among 5 to 6. That's something to be validated. So we need a model. It will be, let's say, a matrix, a decision-making matrix, calculating the societal factors or other dimensions of decisions to be implemented and to give us an algorithm for decisions. It could be something like this. It is something common. It is not innovative, it's something common.
I can speak. First, this was excellent by all means. From my perspective, it's poetry to listen to this call analysis, because what I was getting through my lenses, activities which are necessary for us to perform different expertise, I was grouping them a little bit into work packages already, trying to create some sort of a draft of a work breakdown structure. But the key point that I hope that you got from this exercise is how important it is to intelligently interpret each word which is presented there, from the challenges, but of course as the most important here, the expected impacts, and that you also need to have a lot of background work and research. Why this is it when he says, like, when he said, well, this is a tricky one for his research, because you need to dig deeper into what they meant, what the Commission really means by asking for this. So, only because of the time, otherwise this is a great pleasure to do.
Don't worry.
What I would like to do is to sum up with, wrap up with work with our structure, and we will pass the time for a break, so after wrapping up we'll have a small break then. Thank you very much for this demonstration and call analysis. So based on what he was saying, I've started writing down a little bit of some extracts, a little bit of what he's saying. So he said we need to have to collect the data about what is going on, about the existing knowledge, and he mentioned Cordis as one of the sources where we're going to find ongoing projects. So the first work package, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the first one, but one of the pillars for our work will be this data gathering on the existing knowledge, existing practices and so on. Now, one form of that knowledge is, those are research publications and ongoing projects and so on. And also he had mentioned how we can advance that, because we are working now, now under the frame of interdisciplinarity, which is called for here. So merging some different areas. So we want to have some focus groups, we want to have extracts from their experiences and so on. So this basic data gathering and data analysis and processing and this basic research can be done on two ways. Inevitably, it will need to contain some desk work and some desk research, and documents analysis and so on, and trying to find the most suitable way for the called topics on how to gather the experience from the field work and practices and good cases and so on, those who are at the forefront of using existing tools and methodologies and so on. So that's one part of it. Then after we collect and try to integrate, we're also going to be collecting data about new approaches, new ideas, specifically here new technologies, ICT and so on. And then in the changing environment now after crisis, several of them, we can try to then integrate in one of the next packages. We can try to integrate those knowledge, but on various in various areas. One would be in predicting and then preventing what might be happening. The other one might be investigating. The third one mitigating, yes, and so on. So we might be working with 2, 3, 4 work packages here devoted to something which deals with integration of that knowledge and creation. From that we have a design of something new that results as through this integration of knowledge we come to conclusions that perhaps we might, maybe. Now I'm giving a very simplified, very much simplified case just in order you to just get a better grasp of the next step would be, let's say, perhaps we might figure out some pattern on some or on social networks or on the porn sites in case for child trafficking and so on. Specific words, searches, behaviors and so on might indicate that some groups could be, and that could be a lead for us in investigating or preventing or something like that. So it might lead us to certain groups. Now, can we apply that to some of the newly designed whatever platforms? And that leads us to design of these new tools. Now we're going to try to design new tools, and then because we want to have verified, validated recommendation for policymakers on what they need to be including in new policies, we might want to have in work packages, let's say 6 to 7 or 5, 6, 7. We want to do something which will build case studies and perhaps make some trials, make some tests and validation of our new approaches. We could be doing that. We could be also working with the agencies on their feedback if they give a trial to something and so on and so on. And then we can do by the work packages 8 and 9 or close to maybe 8. We can start working with dissemination, ensuring the impact, ensuring that we have all the listed impacts applied, that facilitating the change in law enforcement agencies' practices and facilitating change in the CSOs, which were also called for, and policymakers' involvement maximized, and them taking in those new methods that we've proposed. For example, if we are proposing new methods or technologies, if we're proposing new technologies. So, and this is then roughly our project work breakdown structure draft. And based on this, now what we've done is something that requires usually like a few days of work, and then after we group what needs to be done in the work package 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and then we would distribute. I would send this to him or he would send this to me, and we would cross-check again the call text, the background documents and so on, and other colleagues also who had experience, well, time and will to contribute at this stage, would then see, well, maybe we should refine and so on, but we have a structure, and based on this structure you can clearly now see what kind of partners you need. And because it's obvious that CSOs are invited to participate, and maybe one of the countries or regions where we can establish to a case study or to some research is from your region. So maybe you have a role to play here. Maybe your data gathering, intelligence, and so on can significantly contribute to this. Now, I don't know at this point, I'm only guessing, but I wouldn't be surprised to figure out that this is the case. So far, all the ingredients are there. But it leads me now to have a clear picture of my possible partners who I need to have on board in my consortium. And this is where I'll make a pause. I think it's a high time to have some break. So let's have a break for some 15 minutes, I guess.
Maybe it's time for a big break.
Big break?
Yeah.
Would you prefer to have a longer break and then?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Agreed.
Thanks.
Shall we go to 40-minute break?
Yeah.
40 minutes. Agreed. I mean, it's on you to decide, so I'm very flexible with it. But this was a real poetry.